The Ukrainian military has completely upended the balance of the front lines by executing the most critical and shocking counteroffensive operation of the summer campaign. Launching a relentless hours-long assault in the Dnipropetrovsk direction, Ukrainian troops managed to breach the Russian defensive line to a depth of exactly 25 kilometers. As a result of this lightning operation, exactly 6 strategically significant villages in the region were wrested from the hands of the Russian occupying forces. The ultimate toll of the operation on the battlefield was the clearing of exactly 120 kilometers of homeland territory from the enemy in a single decisive strike. In the period leading up to July, the Ukrainian military had already liberated 670 kilometers of territory from occupation across various sectors of the front. Now, when adding the 120 kilometers gain achieved through this critical tactical victory, the overall picture on the ground has reached massive proportions. Since the beginning of the summer offensive, the Ukrainian military has reclaimed a vast area from enemy occupation, roughly equivalent in size to 112,000 football fields. While in Operation Liberating, a 120 kilometers area might not sound like much initially, today the territory Ukraine has reclaimed has multiplied exponentially to reach this impressive scale. In addition to these territorial gains, Ukraine achieved incredible breakthroughs in Konstantinivka. This town lies on the fortress belt and is one that Putin has long been eager to occupy. On July 18th, Ukrainian forces launched a major clearing operation against Russian occupation troops in this key settlement, one of the hottest and most critical points on the entire Donbass front. The Skelya regiment acted swiftly. They ruthlessly cleared out enemy units that had slipped into the center of Konstantinivka, a town the Russians had claimed was fully under their control at the start of the month. The regiment also raised the Ukrainian flag over the Culture Palace, the city's main symbol. When you review all the reports from independent analysts like ISW, the picture becomes very clear. Heavy urban fighting and Russian infiltration groups continue in other parts of the city. Even so, the Skelya regiment has completely cleared and liberated the strategic heart and western center of Konstantinivka. Russian commanders had boasted of full control over the city. Yet Ukrainian forces retook the center with a single tactical operation and raised that flag. This move shattered Russia's information warfare efforts and boosted Ukrainian fighting spirit on the ground to its highest level. However, the operation that has drawn the most attention in recent days was the heavy assault in Dnipropetrovsk, because the Special Forces unit that achieved victory in Dnipro was the same team that brought success in Kostanka. This time, the regiment took to the field to liberate even more areas from occupation. The 6 critical settlements where the Ukrainian flag is proudly waving once again following this fierce offensive wave are Ternov, Zaporizhzhye, Novoa, Veron, Sychvy, and Malivka, respectively. Analyzed thoroughly by military strategists, this operation is regarded without a doubt as one of the sharpest and most decisive counterattacks in recent times. Considering both the operational timeline and the prevailing circumstances of the period, Kiev has effectively dealt a massive psychological blow to the Kremlin. As you may recall, Vladimir Putin has given his military an ultimate deadline no fewer than 15 times to seize the entirety of the Donbass region. The most recent critical deadline set by the Russian president for his generals was marked on the calendar as the end of 2026, coming right within this narrowing time frame. This lightning strike by Ukrainian forces sent deep shockwaves through the war cabinet in Moscow. However, the real fact that sent the Kremlin into a panic and astonished military analysts was that this massive liberation operation was executed masterfully and completed within just a few days. When we examine the surgical precision of the planning on the ground, we clearly see that a military success of this magnitude was no coincidental breakthrough. The Ukrainian military designated the Veliko Mikhaila region as the primary springboard and strategic hub for the operation. Given the geographical layout of the region, the dense tree lines wedged between wide-open agricultural fields formed a brutal natural obstacle that made concealing armored vehicles exceptionally difficult. Therefore, instead of conventional armored assaults, Ukrainian command staff formulated an unconventional infiltration and offensive doctrine capable of bypassing the enemy's surveillance radars. When H-hour arrived, dozens of independent maneuver groups lunged at enemy lines like lightning simultaneously from both the eastern and southern axis. At the very vanguard of this deadly spearhead was the 425th Separate Assault Regiment, Skelya, one of Ukraine's most elite and aggressive units. The Skelya regiment is no ordinary infantry unit. This specialized outfit is an elite military force forged in steel across the war's fiercest sectors such as the Bakhmut and Robotyne fronts and has mastered the art of tactical flexibility. The soldiers within the regiment possess unmatched battlefield experience, particularly in the hunter-killer tactics and small team coordination that have become the cornerstone of modern warfare. Yet this special unit was not alone in Dnipropetrovsk. In this heavy assault on the ground, the Skelya regiment was accompanied by armored elements of the 155th Mechanized Brigade and the lethal paratrooper brigades of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces. The greatest secret behind the success of the assault was the deployment of highly mobile ghost-like assault squads rather than conventional mechanized buildups. The moment the assault commenced, Ukrainian electronic warfare units kicked into action, deploying a dense signal jamming shield that crippled the Russian military surveillance network in the area. As Russian strategic reconnaissance drones like the Orlan-10 and Zala were rendered completely blind in the sky, Ukrainian assault squads practically turned into ghosts until they closed in on the enemy trenches. Throughout the operation, an uninterrupted aerial reconnaissance and FPV drone umbrella provided around-the-clock protection for the Ukrainian assault groups. Right before the troops approached the enemy trenches, heavy bomber drones from the 155th Brigade hammered Russian pillboxes from above with pinpoint strikes. Russian soldiers trying to survive the chaos created by the bombardment were systematically taken out of action one by swarms of kamikaze FPV drones swooping into the area immediately afterward. In this offensive, Ukrainian planners pursued a strategy that targeted not only the infantry, but aimed directly at blinding the enemy's eyes on the battlefield. During the most vital phase of the operation, special teams were tasked with hunting down the Russian military's drone pilots and electronic warfare elements in the sector. Advanced antenna detection systems utilized on the ground by signal intelligence units triangulated the radio frequencies of Russian drone pilots in mere seconds to generate pinpoint coordinates. These detected electronic signatures were instantly relayed to field artillery batteries and dedicated hunter drones, striking the enemy's most dangerous elements before they could even launch their assets. The moment Russian drone operators' dugouts were identified by reconnaissance units, they were obliterated by precision artillery fire and suicide drones. Once the enemy's aerial surveillance capability was paralyzed, the Russian defense line was cornered just like a blind and deaf boxer. Capitalizing on this advantage, Kiev began to expand the scope of the operation into different sectors. The spearhead of the Ukrainian forces advanced rapidly, delivering a flawless blow to the village of Temyrivka, one of the most critical logistical arteries in the region. The massive personnel concentration of the 656th Motorized Rifle Regiment attached to the Russian 29th, combined arms army stationed in Temyrivka, was wiped out in a single strike. The newly formed Russian 120th Naval Infantry Division, drafted from the Baltic Fleet and tasked with halting this heavy offensive on the ground, suffered total devastation. Furthermore, Russian support units attached to the 68th Army Corps failed to hold their ground against these multi-axis and synchronized attacks by Ukraine. Suffering heavy armored losses and with their command structure shattered, Russian troops were forced to abandon their trenches and flee to Dnipropetrovsk soil without even looking back. Interpreting this hard-won victory merely as a 120 kilometers piece of land changing color on the map would be a severe military miscalculation. This is because this frontline breakthrough occurred directly at that vital tactical crossroads where the Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts intersect. Securing control of the dominant heights surrounding these 6 liberated villages gave Ukrainian artillery forward observers the advantage of directly overlooking Russian lowland defensive lines stretching across miles of terrain. With high ground dominance shifting to the Ukrainian military, Russian armored movements in the area can now be monitored unobstructed from kilometers away, practically even with the naked eye. Additionally, with this maneuver, the Ukrainian military severed the main artery of one of the Russian occupying forces' most critical supply highways on the southern front. That massive logistics route passing through Temyrivka and feeding the Russian front line is now completely under the direct fire control of Ukrainian artillery. This means that trucks transporting ammunition, fuel, and reinforcement personnel to Russian trenches deeper within the front have now become sitting ducks. The severing of the main asphalt road has forced Russian supply convoys to divert onto muddy and broken village roads, prolonging logistical transit times by hours. Squeezed onto alternative routes, Russian supply trucks have become highly vulnerable prey, extremely easy to ambush for heavy bomber drones equipped with night vision systems. Moreover, pushing the front line 25 kilometers forward has extended the operational reach of Ukraine's attack drones much deeper into the enemy's rear. Russian military command posts, ammunition depots, and helicopter pads in the rear of the front now sit squarely within the lethal range of Ukrainian UAVs. The initiation of deeper-range UAV strikes allows Ukrainian artillery batteries to conserve their precious stocks of 155mm munitions, saving these shells strictly for critical counter-duels. Having long-range kamikaze drones replace artillery and targeting the rear creates a massive efficiency in battlefield ammunition economy in Ukraine's favor. This tactical breakthrough has simultaneously provided tremendous breathing room for Ukrainian defenders on the Mariupol and Orikhiv fronts located immediately to the west. Russian generals experienced strategic panic as the initiative on the very axis they were attacking suddenly shifted into the hands of the Ukrainian military. This maneuver superiority on the ground has given the Ukrainian military the ability to force the enemy to fight on terms of its own choosing in upcoming operations. From the standpoint of military psychology, seeing troops that had been on the defensive for months tear through enemy lines with such speed has elevated the military's fighting morale to peak levels. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thank you.